Did you know $65 trillion are needed to meet the below 2 degrees target of the Paris Agreement? I'm Daniel Hartz, and this is the Sustainability Champions podcast, where we highlight the people, ideas, and innovations that are protecting and healing the planet. Today, I'm speaking with Rachel Finesilver, Manager of Sustainability and Responsible Business at Lloyds Banking Group within their commercial bank. Lloyds is the UK's largest financial services group, and they've made a commitment to reduce the carbon emissions they finance by more than 50% by 2030. They're playing their part by investing in tackling climate change, having provided £6 billion of green financing for their clients since 2016 through their sustainable financing initiatives. For example, Lloyds Bank and Scottish Widows, which are both brands within Lloyds Banking Group, together provided £273 million of funding towards the world's biggest offshore wind farm, the Hornsea Project 1. I'm really looking forward to learning about how Lloyds is playing their part in reducing climate change. So, Rachel, thank you so much for joining me today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
And where are you taking the call from?
Yeah, I'm just in Northwest London at the moment and still making the most of working from home.
Absolutely, and for the remaining of the warm weather, although that's pretty much gone.
Yeah, we've lost the heat wave.
Exactly. It was nice while it lasted. So today I'd like to really talk about three primary things. So number one is how Lloyds Banking Group is approaching climate change and their commitment to reducing carbon emissions. As we mentioned, that's a big part of what you're focusing on. I'd love to hear your background specifically and how you started in this area, because it's really cool to have this much kind of focus on and I would say almost influence in pushing carbon neutrality and reducing carbon emissions, and also any advice on that you can provide on what people can do to be more environmentally friendly, whether it's at home or even from a financial standpoint. So briefly, before we jump into all of that, what exactly do you do at Lloyds?
Sure. So I work in the commercial banking division at Lloyds Banking Group, which is the part of the bank that looks after our business customers through the Lloyds Bank and Bank of Scotland brands. Mm-hmm. And to put that into context, we serve over 100,000 clients across a wide range of business sectors, from the kind of small local businesses up to multinational corporations and financial institutions. And my role within that context is then within the sustainability and responsible business team. And really that involves working on our longer term thinking about sustainability and the risks and opportunities that they present to us as a commercial bank, but also in supporting our colleagues and helping them best support their clients in discussions around sustainability and responsible business.
Wow, that's really cool. So basically, you're working with clients to make sure that the way that Lloyds works with clients, or the way the clients actually conduct business is more sustainable and greener?
Yeah, so it's a bit of both. We have this ambition to, halve the amount of carbon that we finance by 2030. And so in order to meet that target, we're really keen to work with green businesses. But also, we've got a lot of clients on our books already, and we like to see ourselves as more than just, their bank that provides them a loan, but really their kind of trusted advisor that they come to talk about their business strategy and the kind of themes and different priorities that are facing them as a business. And sustainability is one of those growing themes. So we try to play our part in providing insight and helping them consider the different risks and opportunities that may face their business.
That's awesome. How did you actually get started in the sustainability field? What was sort of that moment where you realized, like, this is interesting to me, or this is what I want to do?
Yeah, so this is a pretty new role for me, but to be frank, it's a dream role. I'm thrilled to be able to follow one of my passions as part of my work life.
That's awesome.
Until fairly recently, sustainability was more of a personal passion of mine. I was that annoying person always reminding friends and families to, bring their reusable coffee cup and championing buying secondhand. But I think with the growing focus on sustainability in the media, thanks to the likes of Greta Thunberg and David Attenborough, it's becoming far more of a concern for businesses too. And I noticed that at Lloyds, we were doing quite a lot in this space. And so I made it a really personal goal of mine to try and transfer into that part of the group where I could utilise the experience I already had within the various parts of the commercial bank over the last few years, but really focusing on my passion and my purpose around sustainability.
That's really cool. I think it's a great way to do it. You know, if you see an opportunity, if you're interested in sustainability, for instance, or really in any topic, obviously this podcast is about sustainability, so that's what we talk about. But yeah, so if you see an opportunity in sustainability, it's so cool to be able to transfer into that, especially if you know the way that the business works and you're able to take that knowledge and just go into a new division and start applying what you already know and also what you're interested in. I think that's a really, really cool way. And it probably, well, I would imagine it's really exciting to actually go to work and know that you're making a difference that matters to you.
Exactly, it's that whole purpose piece. You need to make sure that you're getting that when you get up in the morning. So luckily for me, I definitely have that box ticked.
That's awesome. Good for you. With Lloyds Bank, one of your big kind of slogans is this idea of financing a green future. So, and I think you've already touched on this, but it'd be really interesting to hear a little bit more about what exactly that means in terms of how Lloyds is financing a green or a greener future.
Yeah, that's a really great question. But I think before we get into that, it's probably worth setting a bit of context on sustainability as a topic in its own right, because I'm sure you and your listeners know it's a topic that's been really growing in momentum over the last few years, and even over the last few months, we've really seen it ramp up. It's constantly evolving, very fast moving. But effectively, what we've seen is as that topic has grown momentum, the public from across the world are demanding change, and consumers are demanding more from the businesses that they buy from. And at the same time, the UK government has declared it a climate emergency and has committed to aim for net zero emissions by 2050. And that's got implications for all clients as they face into the changes to their business models, to their markets, and even new regulations that will come into force. And so with that in mind, supporting the transition to a sustainable low carbon economy is one of our strategic priorities at Lloyds Banking Group, especially given our unique position at the heart of the UK economy and our purpose of helping Britain prosper economically, socially, and environmentally. Now, that being said, I'm mindful that we're operating in some pretty unusual times, and businesses today have got a lot on their plates over and above just sustainability. Many businesses are just fighting to stay afloat. And so our vision has had to shift a little bit to instead focus more on helping Britain to recover from the pandemic. But, with all of that in mind, it's still worth noting that anything we do is intrinsically linked to the UK economy, and the UK still has a legally binding commitment to deliver net zero by 2050. And so we at Lloyds are really well placed to play our part in helping the UK transition to that low carbon future that we need. And that's why earlier this year we announced that new ambition to accelerate working with customers, government and the market to help reduce the carbon emissions we finance by more than 50% by 2030. And that's really important because financial services can be a really key part of the solution. And at Lloyds, we can do so in a really meaningful way by playing to our strengths and focusing on what we know and what we're good at, and that's financing. As the biggest commercial bank in the UK, we can work with our clients and use that lever of finance to bring about change and make a real difference to, firstly, our business customers, but also the communities that they serve. And we know that we can only really achieve our ambitions by working alongside our strategic partners and UK government. And that's why, a few weeks ago, we joined with over 200 other businesses to support the call to ensure that the economic recovery plans align with the UK's wider environmental goals. And I think when you think about sustainability, the UN Sustainable Development Goals are a really great framework to think about the changes that we need to bring about in the future. And in order to deliver those goals, or even just, the UK's transition to net zero by 2050, there are a number of different projects that need to be delivered to meet those goals. And those projects require financing, and financing is what we do. So we at Lloyds have got a big part to play in making that green vision a reality by working with businesses that are helping to transform the UK economy into that cleaner, greener one, but also through helping our clients to understand the importance of the changes that are coming and how we can help them prepare for the transition as well.
So how do you actually finance a greener future?
Sure. So primarily for us at the moment, it's through our green finance products. And one of these is our Clean Growth Financing Initiative, which provides discounted lending to our clients for purpose-driven green capital expenditure. And this can cover a basic revolving credit facility, which is essentially like an overdraft for a business client, up to financing the purchase of specific new assets. And we've made sure that the terms of eligibility are really clear. The loan purpose must meet set criteria to make sure that the purpose of the investment is really green oriented and it's not just greenwashing. And in addition to the green lending for that CGFI initiative, we also offer green bonds, green deposits, and sustainability linked loans. And to bring these to life, these investments could fund things like the purchase of electric vehicle fleets for businesses, to ground source heat pumps, to solar panels, and also energy efficiency improvements. Following on from the points laid out earlier, we know that the demand for green products and services are growing fast, and consumer expectations are higher than ever when it comes to sustainability. And that's why we've provided more than £6 billion in green finance through these products to support UK businesses to transition. And between 2015 and 2019, we raised over £2.8 billion in green bonds for UK corporate issuers, more than any other UK financial services company. So, we're playing our part, but clearly there's more to do.
That's really cool. I mean, that's quite a substantial amount of capital that's going towards green initiatives.
Yeah, huge. And we're just one bank, so there's lots of other banks also operating in this space, and it's growing. So there'll be more and more to come.
This is an off-the-cuff question. What would you say, kind of, sort of in a summary, I suppose, way? What would you say is the role that banks play in moving us as, I suppose, a species forward in becoming more sustainable?
Yeah, big question. I think it comes back to the point I made earlier that, banks primarily provide the funding for future initiatives. So, it's all great to have a big idea about different ways that we can improve the environment, but somebody's got to translate that idea into a reality, and typically that requires money. And so I think the role of a bank is thinking through the logistical challenges in delivering that vision, but also considering the different risks and opportunities to delivering that vision. There may be other complications that the kind of general idea doesn't necessarily think about. So our role is working with different people across the industry, investors, our supply chain, our competitors, other clients, to really understand the different risks and opportunities that are involved, and then working with our clients to deliver those goals that ultimately on aggregate will drive us towards that longer term, more sustainable future.
Got it. So when you have those kind of conversations with your clients, I mean, what is it that you're typically talking about from the point of view of sustainability?
Sure. So I think typically we'll tend to talk to them about the commercial risks and the opportunities that are involved when you look at sustainability. So, if we take the risks first, I think the case for physical risks is pretty clear. There was widespread flooding in England earlier this year. There were the wildfires in Amazon, Australia, more recently California. And there's been impacts on biodiversity, hunger, displacement. all of these can have a massive impact on a business's ability to operate. And we're seeing more and more of these images through the media. But if you just take carbon as an example, the International Panel on Climate Change said in 2018 that we had 12 years to limit warming to 1.5 degrees compared to pre-industrial times. And in order to achieve that goal, we need to halve emissions by 2030 and then halve them again each and every decade after that. And to put that into context of what we're seeing today, we saw emissions drop globally by 17% in April compared to last year because of the pandemic. But by the end of this year, we're expecting drops of only around 5% as things have started opening up again. And in order to limit the impact of global warming, we need that sort of reduction each and every year until net zero emissions are reached around 2050. And those reductions are not going to happen through lockdowns and restrictions, but by climate policies that lead to the deployment of clean technologies and reductions in the demand for energy. So that kind of leads on to the second type of risk, which is a transition risk, which is the risk that businesses are left behind and don't adapt to the future that's coming. Either they've not built in resilience for climate change, or they might not face, they might face increased costs to adapt to the future regulation and legislation that's coming. And so, we recognise that climate success will be contingent on addressing those risks, but also designing a transition that's both fair and seen to be fair across the country and across societal different levels. And so this is what's been termed the just transition, which is delivering climate action that generates positive social impact. And we've recently welcomed the publication of the Grantham Institute's Just Transition Report, which highlights the importance of socially and an economically fair transition towards the low carbon future, and has committed, we've committed to do all we can to help make sure that, that just transition happens in the UK. And then the third type of risk is reputational. So, as I mentioned earlier, public sentiments are changing and consumers expect more from their companies today. People are more knowledgeable about the environment. They've got access to a lot more information that they may once have done. And people take a lot more things into consideration when making their consumption choices. And we're demanding more from our producers. And so companies need to ensure that they're meeting those needs. So we have a role to play in firstly demonstrating our own ability to do that, but then also helping our clients adapt to those changes to better serve them for the long run too. But then on the flip side, with any risk, you've also got opportunities. So, you had a stat at the introduction, and the one that we use is Mark Carney has estimated that there's between $5 to $7 trillion a year that needs to be invested globally to meet those, the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And that was before the huge downturn we've seen as a consequence of the pandemic. And we've all been affected by the ongoing impacts of COVID-19. It's one of the most complex issues we've ever faced. But some research that we launched a couple of weeks ago together with the Carbon Trust found consumer spending has shown that carbon emissions fell by 4.3 million tonnes at the height of the lockdown, which is a drop of 27% compared to the same period in 2019. And so whilst the focus of the attention at the moment has quite rightly been on our response to the pandemic, net zero remains a legislative and environmental necessity. The country's made a commitment to change the way we live and the way we work. And we believe that the transition to net zero through sustainable growth will be core to the recovery in 2020 and beyond. And if there's a positive to take from the last couple of months, and I say that being hugely conscious that it's been deeply distressing for many, many people, but this does present an opportunity to build a more resilient economy for the UK. And we know that pre-COVID, the green economy was projected to grow at 11% a year, with low carbon technologies fast representing the future of British business. And that growth rate was about 4 times the rate of the standard economy. So investing in low carbon transition is clearly a job creator, as well as accelerating the transition to net zero. And so, it's more important than ever that the UK meets its own climate targets and the globally binding Paris Agreement. And there was a survey that Ipsos Mori carried out that said 2/3 of people in the UK believe that in the long term, climate change is still just as serious as the coronavirus is in the short term. And in our recent research, we found 1 in 3 UK adults are now more likely to try and reduce their carbon footprint, which is going to spark, their own mini green recovery. So with that new focus on a green recovery and this ongoing narrative about building back better, there's going to be lots of investment opportunities within the green space. And so we're well placed to support the financing of those investments and encouraging our clients to take part in those different changing technologies too.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool. And so what are some of the sectors that you're focusing on in terms of actually, helping clients transition?
Sure. So I think before I get into kind of the sector focus, it's probably worth us talking about kind of our strategy that we've kind of taken within the commercial bank with respect to sustainability. And we've really done that through 3 key pillars. So our first has been around investing in colleagues, and I can come back to that in a bit more time. Our second pillar has been about making some ambitious sustainability commitments. And again, I can come back to that. But the third part has been around supporting the transition. And within commercial, we've really focused on some sectors that contribute to the largest amount of emissions within the UK. We're a UK-centric bank. We should try and use our position to help the UK transition to that low carbon future that we need. And so for us, we've taken that lens where we've assessed which sectors make up the biggest part of UK emissions, but equally, in which sectors are our clients most concentrated in to help us determine where we can have the biggest impact. And it's worth bearing in mind that in order to make inroads within those sectors, we've deliberately taken the decision to identify the right people to work with in those areas and leverage their expertise through commercial partnerships. We're very much aware that we're a financial services firm. We're not, expecting to be experts in anything outside of that. We can't do it all on our own. And so we need to work with other people who are experts in those fields. So, one of the sectors, to come back to your question, that we've focused in on is agriculture. And we've made a specific commitment to support that sector to meet its ambitious net zero target of 2040 through our brands, Lloyds Bank, Bank of Scotland and the AMC. And this sector generates 10% of the UK's emissions. And we have got a role to play as the largest lender to that sector, but also given, we've got to act a lot sooner to meet those goals a decade earlier by 2040. So we've come up with a package of different measures, which includes, lowering the minimum lending amount to access green funding, broadening what it is that we finance, and promoting and facilitating the use of 3 market-leading carbon measurement tools. And we did some analysis as part of building out our proposition, and we found that 9 out of 10 farmers don't currently have a way of measuring their carbon footprint. So that's a really important step forward. And the reason we've done that is because it's not just about providing finance. It's also about providing help and advice along the way through our relationship managers who have been through training to develop their knowledge. But in addition to that training, we also provide sustainability information sessions directly to our clients to provide practical information across the sector through our partnerships with relative and relevant experts in that field. And then on top of that, we've also announced plans to plant 10 million trees by the end of this decade in partnership with the Woodland Trust. And some of that is working with our farmers to plant trees directly on their lands. But, the tree planting is just one of a number of different offerings that, I've covered that we provide to the agricultural sector. But I can also tell you about what we're doing in the transport space and also in the real estate sector if you're interested.
That's really cool. Just going to the, and it sounds like kind of the theme here is that Lloyds has money where they can support. So it's, I like to talk about how supply and demand plays a really big role in the way that companies move towards becoming greener, because we as consumers have the ability to actually to actually sway what companies sell based on our purchasing decisions. So
Yeah.
it seems like Lloyd's is sort of on the other side of that supply and demand equation, where you can sway what companies do and how they think based on how you lend money to them and finance them. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, it's around kind of working in conjunction with, you know, the goals that the UK government set out, but also, yeah, responding to those patterns of changing consumption, and you know, making sure that businesses are prepared to kind of walk that line, because yeah, the government sets goals and that can impact regulation, which will affect businesses. Consumers can change their consumption patterns and that will affect businesses. And so our role is to kind of help advise, you know, clients to understand those challenges that are coming up and help them think about the opportunities and the risks to their businesses, and how we can help, you know, them with their longer term strategy in a way that is kind of low risk, and safe for the business and for us.
That's really cool. When you're saying that 9 out of 10 farmers don't have the tools to measure their carbon footprint, is that something that Lloyd's actually supports farmers to be able to do?
Yeah, so I mentioned, so we now point them in the direction of one of 3 different carbon calculators to help them better measure their carbon footprint, because unless you know where your emissions are, it becomes very difficult for you to make any changes. So we did a bit of research before we built out this proposition, and that's one of the key findings that we found.
That's really cool. And when does the lending depend on, like, they have to go through the carbon calculator and show you the results?
No, it's completely optional for the business. It's just to add, you know, additional insight for them. But, you know, if they come to us and, you know, require, I don't know, a loan to purchase a new tractor, you know, there's various different types of, you know, tractors, as an example, that they could buy.
That's really cool. At the beginning, you mentioned there are 3 pillars, and one of them is investing in colleagues. So what exactly do you do there that allows Lloyd's to finance a greener future?
Yeah, that's a really fundamental point for us. So in order for us to be able to engage our clients effectively and have the best opportunities to support their investments in sustainability, we need to lay the groundwork with our own people and equip them with the knowledge and the skill so that they feel confident and fluent to engage with their clients on the issue of sustainability. And so, as part of our commitment to help our clients, we've trained over 640 colleagues through our partnership with the Cambridge Institute of Sustainable Leadership. And that involved, in pre-pandemic times, a pretty intensive face-to-face course over a day and a half with a number of different experts who would come in and really paint the picture on a number of different themes, covering why these are such important issues and providing the hard facts on what we've got to face in the coming years, as well as, you know, some clients who would come in and share their stories on how we've helped them. And finally, we'd finish with some sector-specific insights. And all of that was backed up by further online training modules that all colleagues were required to complete on a number of different topics to get their accreditation from Cambridge. And that should really form the basis and the understanding to give our relationship managers the language and the tools to be able to talk to their clients about the themes that they are seeing, and to bring it to life for customers. And the support that we give to our colleagues is then more than just the training. All of that activity is supported by monthly newsletters, which provide the most up-to-date insights on client themes, but also national and government context. And we also host a suite of webinars internally to provide deeper dives into relevant topics. And all of that is underpinned by an internal collaboration site to share resources with one another on the different themes that we're seeing.
Wow. So that's, yeah, I can see. I mean, you basically need to make sure that your employees inside and inside the company and internally know what they're talking about, and how to actually approach the subject in order to be able to go forward and talk to your clients about it. So that, I mean, you mentioned agriculture, and there was 2 other ones.
Yeah.
But it seems like, what were the other 2?
So real estate and also transport.
Right. Yeah, those are, I would imagine, huge huge opportunities where you can really support companies that are going into a greener future with so many different areas. And I mean, you mentioned Lloyds is the largest banking group or financial services group in the UK. It could be pretty challenging to know where to start. I mean, there are just so many opportunities and areas that you can go. So where do you focus your activities first? Would it be starting internally, and then kind of based on that you have an understanding of where to go next? Or is it really just well, actually I have no idea. How do you approach when you have so many different opportunities?
Yeah, so it comes back to our strategy that I covered previously. So, we've got those three pillars, and the first point is around investing in our colleagues, which I've covered just now. Our second pillar has been around making some ambitious sustainability commitments, and that aligns really nicely with what the wider group have done. But within the commercial bank, we've committed to supporting transactions that will power 5 million UK homes with renewable energy from 2018 to the end of 2020. And we delivered that a year early,
Nice.
which we're really proud of. And already today, we've delivered 6 million homes, and we've still got a few months to go before the end of 2020. And similarly, within that same plan, we also committed to help commercial banking real estate clients to invest in the energy efficiency of their estate, so that 5 million square feet of commercial real estate will also become more energy efficient by the end of this year. And on that metric, we've hugely over delivered, having improved something like 19 million square feet to date. So again, we're really hugely proud of those achievements. So, we invest in our people, we come up with some big ambitious statements. And then the third part has been around supporting the transition. And as I mentioned previously, that's about focusing in on the sectors that really contribute the largest amount of emissions in the UK, but also the sectors that we are most concentrated within to help us determine which are the ones that make the biggest impact. So agriculture, as I've covered, is a key one. We are the biggest lender to that sector, and it makes up 10% of emissions, and they've got a really urgent timeline that industry has committed to achieving. So that's why we started there. Transport is the leading sector for emissions in the UK, and it's also been fairly stagnant over the last few years when a lot of other sectors have made far more significant reductions. That being said, it's also the sector that's probably been most impacted by the pandemic, and probably one of the sectors that will see the biggest reduction in 2020. So we're mindful that it's a pretty challenging place to be at the moment. And on top of that, we've already seen the government legislate in that space that there'll be no new petrol or diesel or even hybrid vehicles sold in the UK by 2035, or even slightly earlier in Scotland. So, we're already starting to see that sector become competitive sport in terms of manufacturers and suppliers of vehicles announcing ever more electric models, and our own clients seeing it as ever more differentiating to be able to talk to the credentials of their own fleets. So within the transport sector, we've partnered with the ITT Hub, who are innovators in technology and transport, to sponsor their signature event, which brings together the whole of the transport sector to focus on its journey, no pun intended, to net zero. And that partnership will give us the opportunity to collaborate in a network and sit on their advisory board that's focused on the transition of that sector as a whole. And the key thing here is that sector needs collaboration across the whole supply chain to come up with solutions that will transform that sector into a low carbon, resilient one that works for everybody. And their event was meant to be in May of this year, but understandably that's been delayed until next year. Fingers crossed it all kind of goes ahead, but that's when we'll really kind of collaborate within that space. And then real estate is another sector that we really focused in on, because quite a large amount of the UK's greenhouse gas emissions come from the built environment. And also, if you think about it, every business has a premises that it operates out of. So it's quite a nice kind of lens to look at our client base and think how we can kind of help clients across the piece. And a key part of our strategy for supporting the reduction in emissions in that sector has been the development of our green buildings tool, which we built in association with the sustainability consultancy, the CFP Green Buildings. And it's available to any of our clients who own or rent property portfolios of any size. And it's a digital insight tool that enables you to identify, evaluate and understand the return on potential investment to make your property more sustainable and energy efficient. And it's the largest data system of its kind in Europe, and it uses proprietary information that's not publicly available. And so the tool has the ability to process information from just one property all the way through to a large portfolio, and it distills that data into an easy to navigate business case that makes it really easy for our clients to take action on some of the findings from the tool. And when you look at the situation we find ourselves in now with the pandemic, it represents a really great moment for businesses to consider their footprint. And that being said, I'm mindful that businesses have got a lot of decisions to be making right now, and their footprint might not be top of the agenda, but for some of them, the insight from this tool can be really helpful because it can help them make some big decisions on which buildings to retain and which buildings to improve. And a key thing to bear in mind is that 80% of the buildings that will exist in 2050 have already been built today. And so we can only really improve the emissions by looking at that whole retrofit opportunity. And quite recently, the UK government announced that it's effectively put aside £1 billion worth of funding to support the decarbonisation of public buildings and social housing, and then another £2 billion to fund a scheme to help households towards the cost of energy efficiency upgrades. And on that latter point, our retail bank have also just launched a kind of complementary version of the tool I've just described for our kind of home customers. And it's the same kind of thing. It's really quick and easy. You answer a few questions about your home, and it gives you a personalised action plan with estimates of your EPC rating and your home's emissions. So retail customers can also use that tool and then see how they could potentially take advantage of the government's recent announcements on retrofitting. So there's some of the examples of some of the sectors that we operate in, if that helps answer your question.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's interesting to think about the fact that 80% of buildings that are currently built will be around in 2050. It makes sense. It's just somehow kind of surprising anyway. So yeah, retrofitting clearly is going to be a huge opportunity for a lot of I imagine companies and people who are looking to go in, because it doesn't make sense to knock down an entire building and build a more eco-friendly one. So that's kind of an interesting insight from the point of view of, because there's so many things that you're doing, both internally at Lloyds and externally at Lloyds, and focusing on, planting trees and working with these three sectors and so on and so forth. How would you say that Lloyds actually compares in the market on sustainability? So, when we're looking at other banks and other financial institutions, where exactly is Lloyds in comparison to others?
Yeah, that's a really great question. This year, we were actually named the UK's greenest bank by a company called ShareAction, who are an independent, not-for-profit organisation. And they reviewed all of the top financial institutions across Europe. And we were ranked second in Europe, but first in the UK, in recognition of the progress that we've made and the commitment to change, that we've shown through our actions rather than just through our words. And that being said, we know that there's still quite a long way to go, to get to, that low carbon future that we're all striving for. We've also been the only UK bank to make the CDP A list for climate change in both 2018 and 2019. And the CDP, who are formerly known as the Carbon Disclosure Project, enable companies, cities, states and regions to measure and manage their environmental impacts and climate change risks. And they provide an overall score from A at the top to a D. And the key aspects that have contributed to our A rating are things like our strategy and the actions that we've taken to identify the opportunities and the threats related to climate change and to help finance the transition. But also the climate related targets that we've set ourselves that I've already covered, and the results that we've achieved today in reducing our own emissions, which is kind of more of a group deliverable than a commercial one.
So as the greenest bank, congratulations, by the way, that's super awesome. What are some of the kind of additional things that Lloyds is doing? So for instance, you mentioned planting 10 million trees as a commitment, which I think is fantastic. I'm an absolute tree hugger. I love trees so much. So I think that's really cool and hugely important. What are some of the other areas, broadly speaking, that Lloyds is focusing on in terms of really, your commitment to a greener future?
Sure. So I guess that rating that was given to us by ShareAction is kind of representative of the wider group. So not just everything we're doing in the commercial bank. So I work in the commercial bank, so I'm here to talk about the role we can play in connecting with UK businesses. But that being said, I can talk about what Lloyds is doing at a high level to provide some of the context for some of the work that I've laid out. I'm just not projecting to be an expert. So as a group, our overall aim is to become a leader in supporting the UK to successfully transition. And so to support that, we've set ourselves 7 ambitions. So the first is to become a leading UK commercial bank for sustainable growth, supporting our clients to transition to sustainable business models and operations and pursue new clean growth opportunities. So that's kind of everything I've covered today.
Right.
But additional things are, we want to be a leading provider of customer support on energy efficient and sustainable homes. So that's the home energy tool that I covered earlier that the retail bank have recently launched. We also want to be a leading UK provider of low emission green vehicle fleets. We also have a pensions business, so we want to be a leading UK pension provider that offers our customers sustainable investment choices and challenges companies that we invest in to behave more sustainably and responsibly. We also have an insurance business, so we want to be a leading UK insurer in improving the resilience of our customers' lives against extreme weather caused by climate change. We want to be a leading UK bank in the green and sustainable bond market, and we also want to be a leading UK bank in reducing our own carbon footprint and challenging our own suppliers to ensure our own consumption of resources, goods and services is sustainable. And so to support that, we've made a number of different ambitious commitments, which I mentioned earlier. So there's that 50% target that we've set ourselves to achieve by 2030. And then, we've partnered with the Woodland Trust to plant 10 million trees over the next 10 years, expanding the UK's carbon sink and helping to reforest the UK. But that's not an offsetting target. That's just something in addition that we're doing. And part of that will be through planting trees on our agricultural clients' land. Part of it will be partnering with local communities to do tree planting projects, and some of it will be planting, trees within existing woods within woods, to kind of help improve the carbon sink. So there's some of the things that the wider group are focused on.
That's super cool. I think it's the fantastic thing about being part of such a big organization is that you have the ability to influence and get involved in a wide variety of areas and make a really, really big impact. For people who are interested, like for me, for instance, I'm interested in also in my personal life to be environmentally friendly. And you said that that's something that that you would always remind your friends about, bringing a reusable cup. What kind of advice would you give to people who want to be more sustainable just in their daily lives?
Great question. There's really so much that can be done. I could go on all day about this, but we really can have a huge impact as individuals. And I'd really recommend, taking some time to complete an online carbon calculator, as it's a really kind of easy way, and there's loads of them, but it's an easy way of reviewing your carbon footprint, as it identifies all kinds of changes that you can make. And often, things that you're not necessarily aware of can be really large contributors to your footprint. But I guess overall, my main tip would be just to try and consume more mindfully. I mean, how many times do we overbuy at the supermarket, and then at the end of the week we find a mouldy old carrot at the back of the fridge that we've forgotten about, or we buy a novelty T-shirt for a hen do or a new top, only to realise that we've got a really similar one at home. I generally try to recommend just trying to slow down consumption, and in the spirit of Marie Kondo, just bring into your home all the things that you really love and you'll use, rather than just buying for the sake of buying.
I think that's a really good point. Yeah, mindful consumption. That's a theme that I'm hearing more and more consistently throughout the conversation I've been having, because ultimately there's a lot of there's a big carbon footprint. Not just carbon, it's pollution and using resources in the actual creation of products. And so I think it's a very valid point of the less you consume, the less resources and other kind of things are needed to make those products. So I think that's an important point, and one that you can apply basically anywhere in your life. And finally, for anyone who's interested in the work that Lloyds is doing in this space, everything you've described, what would be the best way to actually either to find out more, or to speak to someone potentially about it, or for any business owners who are listening to this and want to get involved with Lloyds or work with Lloyds on any of the points that you've mentioned, where would be the best place to go to learn about that?
The best place is really on our website, which is lloydsbankinggroup.com. And we have a whole sub-site focusing on sustainability called Financing a Green Future Together, where you can find out lots more and see some case studies of how we've helped some of our clients. We also have separate websites under each of our brands. So there's the Lloyds Bank website, the Bank of Scotland website, Scottish Widows, AMC, etc. So depending on which part of the group that you want to connect with, you can find all of that stuff online as well.
Awesome. Very good. Well, thank you very much for your time, Rachel. Really enlightening. And it's, like I said, it's awesome to see large organizations and the biggest financial services company in the UK really taking big strides to make an impact and to move the sustainability agenda forward. So thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you very much for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, give us a 5-star rating. And also, please subscribe, whether on your podcast app or on YouTube. And that way you can be the first to know about new episodes. Thank you very much, and talk to you soon.